Anyway, so in the book, Lauren and her community, they struggle to achieve sovereignty, but with the help of Mother Nature, they're able to. And I wanted to use this as an opportunity to also talk about what's going on in Pakistan right now with the floodings. And so in the novel, again, not to give too much away, but basically the elements have Lauren's back. It's the rains that cause flooding, which creates a landslide that helps to save her. And so I was saying that in Ifa tradition, and again, that's not my lineage, nor do I know much about Ifa, but from my understanding, we can think of it as like Oya and Shango having her back, having their back, right? And in the novel, there's a lot of reverence for the lands. They honor the trees, they name them, they use it for ceremony. There's a lot of reverence and making peace with the land that happens. And so we see that nature in the end is what has her back. So I raised this to bring up Pakistan because the elements can be very treacherous and punishing. We're thinking about the flooding that's going on in Pakistan. Monsoon season in India sometimes is treacherous. You can think about Hurricane Katrina. Uh, Mother Nature can also wreak havoc on our lives. And climate crisis is real. So if you are still one of those people that thinks it's like fake news, I don't know what to tell you. Other than like, yikes, I don't know what to tell you. With the heat waves, and it's not necessarily, I saw a news article, something on YouTube. One of the news stations was talking about like, Greta striking fear of people? Like, well, obviously these things are terrifying, but like we need, again, I talked with my host yesterday. I'm getting off topic. But we need people to learn about emotions enough to say like, this is fear. I don't have to engage in fear. I can have a conversation about climate crisis without necessarily going into fear and having panic attacks and anxiety and all of that, even though we still do. So I recently watched a video on AJ Plus, and it was talking about Pakistan produces less than 1% of the world's carbon emissions, but they're the fifth most affected country when it comes to climate change and climate crisis. The post goes on to say that right now in Pakistan, a third of the country is currently underwater, and over 30 million people have been displaced. There's been roughly 1,100 people that have died as a result. And if you want to check more, I put the link to the AJ Plus Instagram post on there. Check it out. But it's been called a climate apartheid, is what the UN is calling it. So less than 1% of emissions, and yet the whole world right now is watching them literally, as a nation, just gets flooded by water. So I can connect the climate crisis with shame, and I think I might do that one day because I literally can connect shame with any topic. But right now, I digress. So I'm going to get back into it. Hey there, welcome to the archives. So this is called "The Climate Crisis is Misogyny in Action." So cheeky disclaimer: there's woke shit incoming, right? So just turn away if this stuff is not for you. Get a puke bag or a pillow to yell in. If you're a glutton for punishment and decide to raise your blood pressure by staying and listening to a topic or listening to a person who you know for sure 100% is going to raise your blood pressure because because you disagree with everything that I have to say. It's actually quite kinky of you. So this blog post was originally written on Earth Day of 2021, I believe it was. And the video that I played in the actual video before this one, that one was recorded on August of 2022. And that was about 6 months ago because we're in February now. Happy Aquarius season. Did you watch the Super Bowl last night? I hear Donald Trump was so angry with Rihanna, which is really typical. I'm not shocked by that. So, since August of 2022, there have been different climate catastrophes happening all over the world. I Googled weather disaster in 2022, and the search came back with over 18 in the U.S. alone. Okay, so with regards to the damage that was done in the U.S., with just the 18 reported disasters alone, And this is anywhere from flooding, droughts, uh, wildfires, hurricanes, and other severe storms. So apparently, it cost the American government over $1 billion, and that's according to Google. And here, I want you to pay attention to um, the sources. Pay attention to who it is that I'm citing here as my sources, because that's going to come up in a little bit as well too. So in Canada, where I live, there was a weak tornado that touched the capital region last summer. The heavy winds reportedly caused power outages and affected roughly 1.1 million people, and in and other types of damages. So at least 11 people were reported dead as a result of trees falling on them. So rarely do we ever stop to commemorate these lives that are lost due to climate disasters. We barely blink an eye at all over all of the COVID deaths, which is right now in the millions. So others have talked about this obsession with death and dying people. Uh, Others have written about it as eugenics, as necropolitics, necrophilia. This idea that we're just like consuming and eating up. Um, we don't care about dead and dying people. So I'm not going to get into that here. These events, more recently, are nothing in comparison to the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that hit Syria and Turkey last week on February the 6th of 2023. I've been thinking a lot about the 24 million people that were affected. CNN reported over 36 people have died as a result. Google shows that the number is closer to 37.3 million. So this is just people that are dead in one fell swoop. 37.3 thousand people. Sorry, did I say million? I'm not sure. Misinformation. Google says it's roughly 37,000 people have died, and that 90,000 people have been left injured, and 1.3 million people have been displaced. These are huge numbers. 24 million people have been affected. Not 1 million, not 2 million, not 10 million. 24 million people have been affected. 37,000 people have died, and there's still recovering survivors. So I saw a tweet yesterday that showed a 5-day-old newborn who survived. I've seen images of dogs who are being rescued, humans wailing publicly and just grieving. People are saying that the air smells like dead bodies. Others are begging for resources and support. It's just literally just an apocalypse. Like, it's just atrocious. Some agencies have admitted to being inadequately prepared. The damage is far-reaching, including roughly $85 billion in American dollars worth of damage. I got most of this information from Google. That's the laziest of all searches, right? I did not look to academic journals. I didn't even click on any of these articles because it's a lot for me right now. And this is just me having the privilege to be on the other side of the world, unaffected. And I'm claiming it's a lot. Imagine what it's like to live in Syria right now, to be in Istanbul. Like, these are just headlines that I was looking at, not first-person accounts, not even really going through the articles themselves, right? These are human beings. These are people's friends. These are people's families, just like that, gone, displaced. Their lives are forever changed because of Mother Nature, because of the climate crisis. Of course, nature is not something we can control per se, but at the same time, if we're talking holistically, we're looking at the whole picture in terms of the climate and climate change. we also, like humans, there is some element of responsibility. Um, and people deny this. People deny that climate crisis is real. Like, they deny that climate change is real. I was complaining about minus 41-degree weather here last week or a couple weeks ago. And my host was saying that when he was younger, there was a norm. Minus 40, minus 30, he was saying on months on end. Something has changed. It's like, I don't know how are you going to deny that the weather has not changed? I intentionally raised weak research to say that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to get data on the devastation that's happening all over the world. Like, I literally can live under a rock at times. I'm not the most well connected. And yet even I know that things are not going well on planet Earth. Right? To deny climate crisis is just top tier cognitive dissonance. And I say this as someone who very much so had my head stuck in the sand at one point for many, many, many years. Right? It still hurts to face reality. Like, thinking about the various truths that I don't like all around me, it makes me want to eat edibles, like a lot of edibles, and just drink red wine that I don't even like red wine. Right? You want to escape some of the realities because you cannot believe that it's painful. Addiction makes sense. Others have talked about this. Dr. Gabramati talks about this. Like, addiction really makes sense when you look at the conditions we're living in. Right? And when some of these conditions are man-made, we really have to talk or think about who is responsible for some of this. This is why folks are using words like eugenics. This is why folks are using words like necropolitics. These conditions are also very much so created. We could have avoided a lot of this. We just chose not to. When I say we, I mean those being in power as well as individuals too, right? There's a systemic and the structural. Littering is something very individual that we can do. Wasting water, that's not causing flooding in Pakistan, right? It's a multi-million corporations that are there's all to say, facing these harsh realities is very hard, right? For me, I was at my most traumatized, when I was the sickest, when I was unable to face the realities of the world, back when I was deep in fantasy, deep in delusion. Do you remember those days? Like, she was out here like, I got a soulmate, a twin flame, and life is so good. And I was pretending, I was living a pretend life that was deeply cognitive dissonance. Like, it was just too painful to accept just how bad the situation was. Not just in my life, but on planet Earth. Like, I'm everywhere. Right? When I was in some of the worst shame of my life, I was unable to accept any negativity. Meaning I was a walking poster child for toxic positivity. It's like anything negative just got on my nerves, on my literal nerves. Like my central nervous system nerves. Autonomic nervous system nerves. Like, I could not stand a lot of people because everybody was triggering me, including people who were in pain. Because I was always me, like, well, why are you in pain? What are you complaining about? You don't have it that bad. I didn't even have it that bad, and I thought I had the worst. Right? I claimed, though, to be healing. I couldn't understand why other people couldn't get it together. Do you remember? I was blaming everybody, pointing fingers at everybody and their mothers and their grandmothers, disrespecting elders, calling them out on their trauma. Meanwhile, my life was falling apart, and I just was in so much delusion that I could not call a spade a spade. I shut down a lot of my social media. Do you remember? I was off Twitter and Facebook and Instagram for like 5-6 years. From 15 to like, I just reopened it in 2020, 2021. I was gone. It was too much. Everything was too much. I cut a lot of people off for many different reasons, including them triggering wounds that I could not get a handle on. I was a mess. And yet I thought I was awakening. I thought I was enlightened. I thought I was carrying an empathic and on a spiritual path. I called it a spiritual awakening. Meanwhile, I was very much so going mad. And if you knew some of the conditions in my life, it made sense why I was going mad, why I was so sick. still mad, but like I just own it in a different way, right? It's not from such a negative deficit. Like I look at it more from a strength-based model. I call myself spiritual and religious, as many deniers do. God's guided, I would say, right? It is well. These are just negative haters that are fear mongering. The universe will provide. We've got everything we need. We're abundant. And while all of that is true, also, yes, we are abundant, but what are we doing with that abundance? If we were truly, we actually are not abundant. We're very much living in a scarcity mindset world. Because if we really thought we were abundant, then we wouldn't be hoarding resources the way that we are. There wouldn't be a level of greed if we actually thought we were abundant. Like I was lying to myself. Like, no, we are not, like, this is not abundance. This is very much so a scarcity mindset. Like, I went so far as trying to justify the melting ice as destiny and fate. It's just how it was meant to be, right? You can't, this is just how God meant it for it to be. Those of us from, wait, hold on, this one. Those of us that live in tropical climates, those who can endure the heat, we're going to survive. Wait, what? What about the indigenous communities in the Arctic? Like, they just deserve to just melt away? Oh my God, it's awful. Atlantis sunk once too. Like, you're just like, well, if you look at the olden days, back in the mythological Atlantis, it just sunk. But here we are. The dinosaurs, they just disappeared, but here we are. We made it. Humans will make it over and over and over. Like, it's just, these are the lies I was telling myself. Because it was too devastating to really accept that, like, we are burning ourselves to the ground. We are destructing the earth. Like, we don't have much longer. Do we, like, 7 generations from now? Well, I don't know. Good luck to you and your offspring. There was even an evil side and petty side of me that was like, that claimed that some of these disasters was karma for those when it happened to in areas where like people I didn't like or who I thought had wronged me where they lived. Could you imagine being like, well, those California wildfires, you guys were acting right down there. Like, that's disgusting. Not my proudest moment. And I'm also not alone. That's the worst part. There's a lot of people who really think this. There are people who think that like they hear people have disabilities and they're like, well, that's just karma. That's just a punishment from God, right? This is, again, being the religious, that's just a punishment from God, is an omen. What it was is spiritual bypassing. That's actually what it was. I was lying to myself. That's actually what it was. I was an awful human being. That's actually what it was. I couldn't face that because I thought I was so good. I was so morally right. I was morally superior, right? I'm so empathic. I'm just such a good person that all of this suffering around me, you must have deserved it. Well, yeah, that's until life licked my ass, eh? Karma really is a bitch. So, and I'm not in this context. I mean, in terms of my context, or it boomeranging back to me, right? They say I've been hearing a lot. When you're pointing one finger, the 3 are pointing back at you. I've been hearing people say that a lot, and my dirty ways really was just being reflected back at me. That's out of context, but that led to me performing like I was just had it all together. Right? I was not to blame. Everybody else was to blame. And in doing that, I was projecting my own mess onto others. I don't know if you saw the last episode of Abbott Elementary, the Valentine's Day edition. In the beginning of the episode, Janine is making a phone call to her sister Aisha, who is an Aquarius, by the way, because her birthday was on Valentine's Day, which is tomorrow here, which is Aquarius season, also Black History Month. I digress. Janine was just projecting onto her sister, like, oh, she's messy, it's too much information, I can't get her off the phone. Meanwhile, homegirl was like, that's Janine in a nutshell. But she was unable to see that that's who she is, and it was easier for her to see that in her sister, right? That is projection. I could not admit that this was me. It was easier to be like, that person is like that. That's just projection. right? Deflection. You're just deflecting all of these things. That's, nope, not me. Couldn't be me. It's probably you. So I was seeing it in others. I refused to see it in myself. I was getting irate and mad at other people who were facing and who had the courage to face things I couldn't. That's another byproduct. When somebody else has the courage, the audacity to face what it is that we're unwilling to face, right? When somebody decides to go get help, when somebody goes to therapy and you are still unwilling to change, those people piss you off. If you've never been to therapy a day in your life, people who go to therapy piss you the F off because you're just like, they remind you of what you're not doing. And as much as you call them weak, that's a projection because you actually feel weak because you know that going to therapy is going to shake things up for you. You know you actually cannot handle therapy. But yeah, you're like, soft things. Okay, then go through it then. If it's so easy, then do it. If change is so easy, then why are we not changing? Right? Projection. And then lastly, the worst part is that I would also make fun of people who were struggling just like me. While I'm not that much better, I have grown somewhat over the years. It took a lot of work. Admitting that I wasn't okay was really hard, right? Asking for help was harder. I still struggle to ask for help. I've spent so many years alone healing. And I'm still in a place where I'm finally realizing that I still need to really focus on healing myself because I still have been distracting myself with working on other people. I still was so codependent that I was not really focusing on myself, right? And the healing journey was hard. It was arduous. Like, it didn't have to be that hard. I also have to accept that I made it way harder. I could have been connected to way more community. I could have gotten resources and asked for help way earlier. I was very stubborn at times, right? Hence the delusion and the denial. I made it very hard for myself. It didn't have to be that hard. And I think, but at the end of the day, it still was very hard. Healing is very hard. And I'm speaking of healing here, healing emotional trauma, healing emotional distress, really facing ourselves. I've been thinking a lot about how hard it is for us as humans to really face ourselves and all of ourselves. Not just the good parts, but the parts that we don't like about ourselves. The ugly parts that we would rather see in other people. When we finally turn that microscope inwards and we do that self-work, when we do that introspection, it's difficult. It's not easy. And I think a lot of people know that. I've said that before. A lot of people know that healing is very difficult work, actually. They know that it's time consuming. A lot of people don't have the time. They don't have the luxury. It's not a luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury. But for some people, it is, right? When you have to work 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet, healing is a luxury. When you can't afford to go into your traumas because you're afraid that you're going to get stuck there and you have kids that are depending on you to wake up tomorrow morning, to feed them, to go to work, you cannot do that, right? And so there is definitely a level of privilege. I acknowledge it shouldn't be that way, but healing is hard. That's all I'm going to say. And that's why a lot of people pretend that it's not, or they knock it. So what these last few years have taught me about the harsh truths have taught me is that things are really bad. Like, things are really, really, really bad. And also they're really, really, really good. Like, we have made a lot of progress. People are doing amazing work that's reaping a lot of fruits. And also the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? We have to hold space for both and. But collapsing that binary and being open to all of it is really difficult, right? Finding hope in the apocalypse is almost impossible. Seeking joy in the grief is actually very difficult. And you can insert whatever corny adages you want to put that like makes your eye rolls, insert that right here. Holding space for both is really difficult. So now I mostly just shut up. I mostly just try to shut up and say very little. I'm still obviously a know-it-all, as you can tell. I've always have been, and I probably always will be. But I'm trying really hard now to just mostly just sit and observe. Just shut up and listen, right? Including to Indigenous and First Nations people who have been sounding the alarm for decades. For decades. I believe in science now. I'm listening to scientists, including those that are literally setting themselves on fire, risking their lives to alert us of the impending destruction. Most of us don't care because climate justice is not sexy. They haven't found a way to make it profitable, and so they will continue to deny or dismiss the violence that's happening They will pretend that the voices that are warning us are being too dramatic, they're being too sensitive, they're race baiting, what are like just the facts are off, they don't have the data. What we will say anything to make sure that we will not face what it is that we don't want to face. Most of them will never believe or change their minds. People are like a lot of people are not going to change just ever, right? Because they don't care. They don't care about the land, right? And in similar ways, they don't really care about women, the feminine, or humanity. That's just not how their operating system is built. It's just not. That's not their default programming. To care about other people is not something they intuitively, innately just do. Money is what comes first, right? Power is what comes first. Domination is what comes first. So while some Indigenous communities globally identify the land and nature as mother, she, her, in my culture, we say asasiya or yasase, which is what another name that we call the land. I've had debates with white feminists specifically who abhor the idea that the land should be gendered. They don't like that the land is gendered as a woman, right? They just don't understand why Indigenous communities do that. A lot of these same people despise the idea of emotions. They don't like emotions. They don't want to feel emotions. They really can't stay in kindness. They're just nurturing anything is just to them disgusting, right? No one should be that way, especially not women, because women are stereotyped as that. To be a feminist is to be anti-emotional to them, is to be anti-nurturing, because women are not innately nurturers, is what the argument goes, right? These same people can't see how alike they are to men that they claim to be better than. They also can't see that they're caught up in the gender binary just as much as the next person. They can't really connect the gender binary with settler colonialism or imperialism. Like they're just. But I digress. So I'm Catholic, so I was raised to also believe that the Holy Father, is up above in the sky looking down at us. My dad also did well in teaching me some of the old ways. So I also learned that Mother Earth is down in the ground, on the land, right? I hold space for both. In my adult years, I've been more focusing on honoring the land and the waters, which a lot of people in my community don't like, especially the Christians and the Catholics. There's a video yesterday I saw of this woman preaching, saying that Beyonce is the devil and her concerts are a gateway, is an initiation. Like we've really bought into what we've been taught, that the old ways are demonic, is evil. Like, God forbid that women celebrate their bodies. God forbid that church girls also will twerk. Like, evil, demonic, devil's work, right? And so honoring the land is seen as something that is bad, even as a Ghanaian who we come from Indigenous ancestries. That is all bad. Like, if you watch Ghanaian movies, if you watch Nollywood, like a lot of it is just like the medicine keepers. They are just, it's witchcraft, it's evil, is before juju. Like, it's just not it. Well, too bad. I love the water. I honor the water. I revere the water. She is my compass. She's my confidant. She's my truth teller. That is my mother, right? I am the daughter of Yemaya and Oshun. That's not my lineage, but I do appropriate that. That does resonate with me. I love the water. I sing to her when I can. I thank her. I compliment her. I tell her how beautiful and gorgeous she is when I see just how breathtaking water is. Like, if you can just look at the ocean and just a lake and just not feel something, you're not my peoples. I've written blogs about loving the water, creeks, rivers, ravines, oceans, even tub water. I'm here for all of it. Is that corny? Meh. That's on you to decide. And frankly, I don't care what you decide about that. If you don't believe in the ancestors or that the winds and the trees can communicate to us, if all of this is too Disney Pocahontas or woo-woo for you, well then, like, I'm not sorry. Like, go ahead and make fun of it. Hate on me, like, I don't really care. You likely do the same thing with the earth. You probably do the same thing with emotions. Like, are you seeing how all of these things are connected? Historically and to date, we've seen the same thing that's done to emotions, that are put in opposition with ration, with logic, with affect. Affect theories in the scholarly literature, they don't like connecting emotions with affect. They see them as two different things. I've written about this in my PhD dissertation of how I think that's a little questionable, especially for feminists. Um, French philosophers like Henri Bergson did away with the concept of space, for similar reasons, in favor for time, right? Time was seen as masculine and space was seen as this feminine thing that just had to be done away with. Deleuze and Guattari, they argued for rhizomes over trees, which again is very similar in my opinion. This all feels like misogyny at play. It's just this dismissal of the quote unquote feminine and like how we're gendering space, time, rhizomes, like all of this is, again, gender is a construct, and I'm using this for convenience sake, working with the binary because this is how others have. Um, yeah, I doubt I'm the first to connect the climate crisis with misogyny and the hatred for women and the feminine. But regardless of what you think, nature, earth, the land, Mother Earth, the water, it's all been gendered as feminine as women. We can't deny that femininity is projected onto the land and in turn treated in similar ways as women and femmes, right? There's violence against women and there's also violence against the land. The land is met with atrocious acts of violence in similar ways as women. And this is not to say that men are not also facing violence of their own sort. If anything, that is the way in which men are also, specifically men who are more feminine of center, or just men, period. Violence often is enacted primarily by men. These are the men that I'm talking about. Those that are asserting themselves as patriarchs, as dominant, as forceful, those who kill and beat, diminish, try to erase other men, but also specifically other women. Um, that's who the conversation is around right now, right? We fear nature like we do women. If you look in the past, settler colonialism is a lot. The land was a threat, right? It was this thing to be conquered, dominated, right? Property to be owned. Just like women are property to be owned. Just as women are to be dominated, to be conquered, to be controlled, right? We try to control the land in similar ways as we control women. Um, this then ends up breeding a lot of different things like environmental racism. It intensifies greed and upholds capitalism. It results in humans, nature, animals, forests, and even coral reefs all going extinct. I'm not the first to say this. India's own Vandana Shiva, Kenya's Greenbelt Movement founder and African legend Wangari Maathai, they all address these in their work, right? These climate activists have reminded us that we cannot attend to the climate crisis or environmental justice without centering what Kimberly Crenshaw calls intersectionality. We have to address all of it. Gender, race, class, like it's all intertwined in the land. So allow me to let the conspiracy theorists in me end as I close this blog. So remember, this blog was originally posted on Earth Day of 2021, I believe it was. So back then I wrote, these monsters, I don't know, you know who they are. If you don't know who they are, I don't know who they are. So just blanket statement, homogenizing. These monsters will stop at nothing to win and own everything. They'll kill and deplete everything on Earth, then dip to Mars. That's it. That's all. On this Earth Day, remember this misinformation brought to you by conspiracy theorists with an agenda. What movie did I watch recently? Oh, did you guys watch? I'm not getting into it. You people? With a mom. I was thinking about doing a blog on you people, but for right now, I'm just keeping it to myself. Anyways,
If this resonates, please pass it along and share with others. If it doesn't, it definitely is okay to not do so. I don't even know why you listened and made it this far if you don't even like this kind of conversation. You're definitely a glutton for punishment like I am. If my words are meant for you, please consider donating to the archives. I'm also on Buy Me a Coffee. Thanks for stopping by, okay? Until next time, in solidarity.